let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Sabine Sayed. And like I mentioned, we'll be talking about the technical track versus people management. And I'll go ahead, as I go through my journey, you all will be introduced to me that way. So we'll just kind of go with the flow there. All right, so first, the terminology. So I just wanted to go through that so that you all know what I mean when I'm using these words. So the first is the technical track. So when I'm talking about the technical track, I mean that it's mainly a focus on the design, development, and architecture of products and projects. And this is mainly like the focus of, I would say, an engineer and IC. It doesn't mean that that's the only responsibility or the only skill that you have to have, but generally across like the breadth of, if you are a software engineer or, you're doing front end development or back end or full stack, or you're an architect or in design, generally the commonality, and also between, whether you're a junior engineer or going up into the senior level, generally this is the commonality there. All right, and the next is people management. So when I'm talking about people management, it's basically when you are focusing on your team or your organization, the processes that you have there or that are established there, and then also your product. And for product, I put like in parentheses cross-team communication, basically to emphasize that in this case, it's more of an emphasis on making sure that the other business functions are getting what they need and they have the information that they need to progress. And then also, like, from a high level perspective, from your senior leadership, what are their thoughts and where they want, either your organization or your product to move into, where's a company going, things like that. And then lastly, leader. So I truly believe that a leader is anyone who chooses to be one. So, if you are taking an initiative, whenever you see a challenge or an opportunity, I feel like, that's a leader. You don't have to have that in your title or anything like that. All right. Okay. So with that there, let me tell you all about my story. So I started off kind of in the traditional way, CS degree, worked at a large company, Dell, worked on the manufacturing software there, then moved into Dell.com, stayed as an IC role. I feel like I was pretty junior, wasn't even thinking about management at the time. And then I moved into PayPal, worked in the risk organization, again, as an IC, didn't even think about management. And then I joined Rackspace. So as my kind of career went on, I went into smaller and smaller companies. And when I joined Rackspace was still, I would say, relatively large. It was like 6,000 people, but way smaller than Dell or PayPal. And at Rackspace is really where I found, like, for me, the culture that really gels with me. And at Rackspace, I really felt like the people that I was working with, like I was working with friends, and and that kind of like just ignited my passion, I would say, and where I really liked what I was doing. So anyway, even at Rackspace, for the first 2 years, I was an IC. And then actually about like 6 months into my role, I had my current manager came up to me and he was like, when you become a manager, just remember that to take care of your team in the sense that they're compensated fairly. And I was just, it was just very out of the blue and just really random. I had never talked to anyone about having an interest in management, or even my current manager at the time. But what that did was that it actually kind of piqued my interest. And at that point, I felt like it just kind of sat in the back of my head. And then, fast forward like a year later, one of my ex-managers, so at Rackspace, like there's a lot of manager changes. We used to like change managers like you change clothes. But so one of my ex-managers, he was like, you should think about this and at least give it a thought. And there was actually an opening on my team, and he was like, you should go for it. And at that time, I was really like, like, I don't want to. Is this something I can't even, for me, like the biggest thing was like, I can't even write my own performance review. Like it's just really hard for me. How am I going to write performance reviews for like all these other people? And that just kind of, it just, like now when I look back, it just tells me how little I knew about what management actually was and what a manager actually does. So, but anyway, so some of the thoughts that I had was, like, how am I going to do that? And then, am I going to lose my technical skills? And thinking like maybe 20, 30 years down the line, if I don't really have technical skills, what's it going to be like, and blah, blah. So those are the questions that I had. And then also, the people management track, how do I even manage a team? And suppose I don't like it, what am I going to do? And I talked to this ex-manager about this stuff. I got some answers and some answers I didn't really get, but the suppose I don't like it, at the time, at Rackspace, we had this role. It was called a team lead role. And every company, they define the team lead role differently. But at Rackspace, what it meant was that you had an opportunity to have folks report into you. So generally you would start small, like maybe like 4 or 5 people. And then you could basically kind of try out this role for about 6 months. If you like it, you continue, go on to the management, proper management, go down that line, or you can switch back and go to an IC. And I felt like that was where I was like, basically like, why not? And let me just give it a try. Let me see if this is something that I might like. And at the same time, I started reading a lot. So this is me. And then I started reading a lot, just like books and articles and things about management, and kind of what it takes, what it means. The managers that I had at Rackspace, they were very they were not very heavily involved in like the day-to-day. So I learned from them as well, but it was like to a certain limit. And then the other thing which I recommend for everybody is getting a mentor. And that's really helped me in my journey. And I actually got a mentor within my organization, but they were not on my team. And that person, I felt like that person just like really guided me along my path. So whenever I had a question about, for example, how do you do performance reviews, or what do you think about when you're doing a performance review? What's important? And then other things like, a particular conflict that's happening. How do you have these hard conversations? How do you give feedback that's difficult? So all of that, I got really good information from this particular mentor. So yeah, so I would recommend that 100%. All right. Okay. So now I'll go into the post 5 years and what I've learned so far. And also just know, please, that this is, from my experience. Other folks, will have a different experience. And this is also not like a holistic list. There's way more, but this is just kind of what came to top of mind when I was going through this. So the first thing was that when you become a manager, the focus is on your team. So you kind of take a step back, and your team, you put them forward. And this is basically around, like whatever the work that is going on. Generally, you're focused on them, whether it be, like their careers, whether it be the current work that they're doing, the kudos that they're getting, all of that. That's like your main focus, or at least for me, that's what it turned out to be. And then the second is that the skills that made me successful as an independent contributor are very different from what makes me successful as a people leader. So as an independent contributor, obviously technical skills, communication skills, and then as you continue to grow, like your influencing skills and stuff are come into play. Whereas a leader, I feel like it was very much like relationship building, being able to talk to people and being cognizant. And I kind of get into it later on in the following points is like human behavior. That was one thing that kind of actually really took me, that was a surprise for me because before I went into management, I had this notion, and it was uh, it was what it was. I'm not trying to say that it's correct, but before I used to think that, when people come to work, it's like professional, you bring your professional self to work, you leave the other stuff, back. But that's not true, because people are people and people are holistic and they bring their whole selves to work. And I do support that. And I fully believe that that is what should happen. And that's actually just realistic. So that piece is something that just that understanding that human behavior when someone is, maybe they're not, they're having a bad day, and you have a one-on-one with them that day, you're gonna get some of the brunt of it. And you don't want to leave there thinking like, like like, is it me or what, blah, blah, blah. Like you have to be able to navigate, um, those interactions, and ask those questions in an empathetic way. And then just kind of going on to the next thing is like the importance of empathy, honesty. Honesty is a big one, where I feel like this plays a huge role when you're having those hard conversations, because you need to be able to, at times, be very direct and not sugarcoat, but also not be abrasive. So it's like you want to give somebody feedback. You want to make sure that they understand fully what that feedback is, but you also want to make sure that they're motivated and, and moving forward. And learning about how to do that is, I really think it's an art, and it's something that I feel like over time it develops. And then the other one is vulnerability. So I feel like for me, it's really important to, get to know my team as people. And that means that they need to get to know me as a person as well. And that requires me to be vulnerable. And a lot of the times for me to take that first step, into saying things like, um, you know, just like with all this stuff that's been going on in the US, at least for the past couple of weeks, like being okay with telling them like, yeah, like I'm not doing so good, or, or I'm having a hard time with this or that. So, yeah, so that was something that I felt like I had to learn. And I'm continuing to learn it, FYI, like I'm not perfect at any of this stuff. All right, and the other one is negotiating and influencing. I think that's relatively self-explanatory. Negotiating with other teams, whether it be like, okay, is this the work that we need to do right now? How do we balance that out? And then motivating myself was also another one. So some days, if your vibe is going to affect the tribe. So, if you're not feeling good and you're talking to your team, I mean, it's okay, like I said before, to be vulnerable, but you just have to be cognizant that, um, you know, uh, your vibe does matter and it does catch the rest of the team and have an effect. All right, and then the other one, like I was mentioning before, how to have difficult conversations. That's also something that, that I learned a lot. And then the eighth one, which I feel like is pretty fun, is focusing on the big picture and like, understanding from a business perspective, where are we going, what are we doing, and then understanding all the different business functions. So, sales, marketing, support team, product, and all of that jazz, and like, communicating with them. So yeah, so that's I would say, kind of in a nutshell, what I learned. And yeah, these are some of the questions that I would have asked myself before making a decision. And also, just FYI, these are a lot of questions, and the answer doesn't have to be yes to all of these. This is just something that I wish that that I had known. It's not that it would have um, changed my decision, but just something that I feel like would have helped me know, like, okay, what I was about to get into. Um, all right, so yeah, so I would have asked, like, do I want to learn more about, or does this excite me? Am I excited about building relationships? Am I excited about understanding human behavior? Am I excited about learning how to communicate better? Building empathy, and like a lot of this is from the previous slide, like, putting your team before you. Am I okay with that? A lot of the time, I've seen a number of times where, leaders kind of want to uh, you know, take the praise, and you can't do that anymore. It's not okay. Like it'll take you to a certain extent, but after that, it won't work. Um, and then, does it excite you to like develop efficiency and productivity of your team? Whether it be through processes or, whatever other methods that you want to use. Are you excited about understanding that wider vision, around improving like the whole organization and your products? Um, so yeah, so those are some of the things that I would have asked myself. And I hope like none of this like scares you. I'm not trying to scare people from like going into people management. I'm just trying to say like this is kind of what I learned and what my experience was. And I think a lot of this is really, for me, like I loved it. I found it super interesting, very challenging, challenged me in many, many different ways. And I feel like I've, aged, but still, I still liked it. Uh, and I wouldn't have changed my decision. But yeah, so that's that. And then over here is some material, and I can send this presentation out to folks. But these are some of the books and one article there that I really liked and that really helped me in my